right,
That'd be
you
awesome,
are
right?
good to go.
At 7
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 8th Arts, Culture, Education and Schools Committee meeting. MCB4 has adopted a hybrid meeting policy whereby we will meet both in person and virtually. All community board meetings will require an in-person forum to come to order and conduct business. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability or an extraordinary circumstance as defined by the New York State Open Meetings Law. Excused committee members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Committee members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. We encourage members of the public to join virtually. The MCB4 hybrid policy can be found on our website. Tonight's meeting is still being recorded and currently live streaming on YouTube. So, hello everyone, my name is Josephine Ishman. I am one of the co-chairs of ACES. And we are starting the new year with a change in leadership. So Alan Oster has stepped down as co-chair and Matt Green is the new co-chair. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank Alan for his 6 years of service to this committee. We've gotten a lot done and I appreciate the time and energy you put into it. And I want to invite you to say a few words.
Thank you very much. A pleasure.
Maria.
Maria.
I thought you were getting music from Jesse and everything.
Anyway, so it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor, and it's been an education. As education. Be my last meeting here at ACES. I'm actually moving over to BLP. So they're not getting rid of me yet.
Miss you here.
I want to thank you. Yeah, well, I miss you guys. It was quite a run from quality of life and all the stuff we get set up with ACES and education and street life. But things have a way to kind of meander around and find its own path. And I want to thank everybody here who contributed. I think we've got two great coaches now to lead a new way. And I want to thank everybody who's with it. And especially Jesse, a real big thank you to Jesse for being our shepherd and advisor. And everybody out there in internet land who isn't here, thank you also. And see you in the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Alan. So why don't we start by going around and introducing ourselves, starting with the new co-chair.
Great. Matt Green, and very excited to be stepping into this role. And thank you, Josephine, for the opportunity, and Jesse and Alan, thank you for your 6 years of service, and look forward to continuing to work with you while you stay on the board. So if you have any advice that you want to impart, I'm always open to hearing and learning more, and excited about this new role. So thank you. So yeah, with that, looking forward to being co-chair with Josephine.
Me too.
Leslie Bogosian Murphy, ACES committee member and resident of Hell's Kitchen.
Alan Oster, Chelsea.
David Warren, member of this committee and transportation.
Wendy Gonzalez, resident of Chelsea. Maria Ortiz, co-chair of Housing, Health and Human Services, and I reside in Hell's Kitchen.
Charlie?
Charlie Todd, member of the committee, reside in Hell's Kitchen.
Inga?
Inga Ivchenko, Chelsea resident.
Thank you. Is that everybody?
That's everybody.
Okay. Okay, so we have a very packed schedule this evening. We can start with the public session. Is there anyone there? If anyone in the public has something they'd like to speak on for 2 minutes regarding arts or education, please raise your hand. I think we have all guests there, right? Doesn't look like we have. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So then the first, what we have first on the agenda is Lauren Keel, Executive Director at the Chelsea Factory, is here to give us a presentation on this new space.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. I had sent some slides along before this presentation. Will they be pulled up? It's not a big deal either way, but just someone tell me.
I didn't see them, so I don't have them on ready, but if you have them and you want to share your screen here, you can easily do
I can certainly try. Just one second.
Let me see if I can forward them to you, if you send them to me. I'm just working on a different system here, so.
No problem. It'll just take me one moment. Maybe for the sake of everybody's time here, I can just talk, and then if we want to take some visuals to get a better idea of our space, we can certainly do that. But I don't think it's necessary. Has anybody in this Zoom end room been to Chelsea Factory or know where we are on 26th Street between 10th and 11th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, amazing. So give me a lot of nodding if you already know some of the stuff that I'm saying, and I can go a little bit faster. But I'll just give you some overview, and then most importantly, I'm interested if any questions or ideas come to mind after you hear me give the overview. So I'm Lauren Keel. I am the executive director here. Chelsea Factory. I also am a West Chelsea resident neighbor, so very connected to this part of Manhattan. And Chelsea Factory, as I just said, we are the building on 26th Street between 10th and 11th, a standalone property with the two peaked roofs, built in 1914, landmarked facade, very historic building in Chelsea, which probably many of you know. The garage for the factory equipment when our whole block were factories. Annie Leibovitz owned the building for a while. The bottom was her photography studio. She lived up here where I'm sitting in our offices. Cedar Lake Dance Company was there for a while. And then, as also you probably know, Vornado currently owns the building and was operating it as this big event space, which obviously during the pandemic, no events were happening. So the space was eventually dark. And excuse me, I'm going to cough 1 second as I recover from all kinds of.
Lauren, while you cough, I was able to get the slide sent. If you want to give me one moment, I can get it.
Perfect. So I was just saying our founder is Jim Herbert, who's a philanthropist in the arts of all forms. He also was the CEO of First Republic Bank. So as you might imagine, we have had a very eventful 6 months in recent history. But in any case, Jim's thought in founding the nonprofit organization Chelsea Factory was just looking what was happening to the arts economy and the arts sector in New York City during the pandemic, which we all know. Artists were leaving in droves, production crews were out of work and unsustainable to stay living in New York City. So many of them were leaving, organizations were shutting down, key programs were getting cut from budgets. And there was this awareness of this unsustainability, this sort of unease that was persisting throughout the arts economy and maybe not noticed quite so much. And then on top of racial reckonings that also happened during this period of time, it was very clear that when the arts was going to come back in New York City, as it does, and as it's going to, and as it is, it was going to look different. And there was going to be this moment of need and transition happening in the next few years. And what exactly that was going to look like, nobody could know for sure. But Jim was inspired to bring a resource to New York City that could just respond to whatever that was going to look like. And with that concept, he founded Chelsea Factory. He took a 5-year lease on this building that we're in, worked with Vornado on an initial construction project so that we have upgraded and the insides and have added very flexible theatrical equipment, lighting, sound, projection, movable theatrical seats, a black box that can appear and disappear and get stored along the sides, ability to have cabarets, panel discussions, fundraising events, workshops, rehearsals, dance performances, music performances. And the idea was that we would be here, we would keep the team small, the infrastructure flexible, and for the first time would really open up this incredible building to New York City-based artists. We don't have an artistic director here. We select all of our partnerships based on the same set of criteria, and that is New York City based with an artist from a historically excluded community or art form at some moment of inflection in their career, in their organizational life, in their trajectory, with a unique need for Chelsea Factory's specific space. Because this was not founded to be another big cultural institution vying for the same resources as all of the partners that we were trying to help. So if a partner comes to us and needs a studio in New York City, there are studios that desperately need to be filled with artists, and we want to encourage those relationships to happen. But if there is a project that doesn't fit in or has been cut from the fabric of New York City and Chelsea Factory can serve that need, we just try and say yes to the project, so much so that the calendar allows. That's like a very fast flyby of the why and the kind of what. So we serve artists across all disciplines, which means we have performances here you can come see. There's also kid and family events on the weekends. There's workshops. There's sometimes closed doors rehearsals that are happening, and there's lots of events. And we have, in order to not vie for the same resources that New York City has for the other arts organizations and the other cultural institutions here, we have a very self-contained operating model. So as few corporate sponsors that are very important to us, and then a very significant stream of earned income. So sometimes you will see our building getting taken over by big corporate partners. So Roku, Amazon, fashion shows, Paramount, they are paying us market rate for use of this building, and all of that income directly subsidizes all of the artist and community activity in this space. And that is how we were able to come on the scene in a big way, and with containing our own resources for what this building can bring in from a revenue standpoint, and then how we can directly surge it back to the artists of New York. And yes, questions, wonderful.
Hi, quick question. I went on your website the other day and took a look around. How do artists request to use a studio space or host an event there? How does a typical artist doesn't know anything about this, how do they ask? How do I use it didn't seem, I couldn't find a place where you would.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's definitely there. So what I hear from you is that it's not visible or clear enough, which is good feedback. So there is the inquiry form that you can fill out on the website. There's also all of our contact information. So a lot of times my colleague Raynell, who is our programs producer, I mean, she's probably at 250 conversations at this point. People just email her. She has open dates on her calendar and open slots, and just has met with so many fascinating artists, ensembles, and companies and organizations. And again, every conversation is listening for that same set of criteria that I said. And if it fits, she brings it to the group and we try and work it into the calendar.
Wonderful. So basically go through the inquiry. Okay.
Yep. And
perfect.
I mean, anyone on this
looking
call.
for a button to click on, or, for artist rehearsal space or artist performance. Okay,
yeah,
great.
it's just a general inquiry form, because like I said, instead of like booking studio hours with us, meetings will always be a very human conversation of what happened during the pandemic. Where are you? Where are you trying to go? What is this moment? Is this the right time where we can work together? And it just all happens from there.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how are you guys getting the word out about the space? I think I may have seen like a post on Facebook or something, and that's how I knew about you guys. But you said you do have some children's events. It seems like you have a good, just a very well-rounded group of events happening. So who are you targeting? How are you getting the word out there?
Yeah, Great question. A variety of methods. One thing that's immediately coming to mind, because you're asking, is Chelsea Factory is a part of the West Side Cultural Network, which I imagine you have heard about here. I know some of the other participating organizations, cultural organizations in this immediate area, I know have presented and talked to CB4 also. So certainly like a grassroots, we're talking to artists all day, we're collaborating with organizations across New York City. And when we do work with an organization, we're very transparent with sharing email lists, because again, this isn't a hoarding activity for Chelsea Factory. This is a community activity. So we get word out through honestly doing the work and having the relationships that we do throughout the community. From a more PR standpoint, a variety of methods. So we have a 7,500 person email list, and we encourage everyone to sign up for that. If you're interested, we're constantly keeping people up to date on social. We do put out press releases for some of our performances. And then the surprising and wonderful bonus of our operating model and having those external rentals is when Remova Suitcases or Omega does a big splashy celebrity filled event here. We have in the contract that they need to name that this is Chelsea Factory. Wherever we can impress, we're trying to say where that corporate revenue is subsidizing New York City based artists, primarily from historically excluded communities, working in this building on the days that the corporate event is not there. And those events get such huge press pickup that we find most of our exposure ends up coming from that side of things too. And it's been driving traffic to our site and signups for our emails as well.
Smart move. Any other questions? I think that Charlie Todd. Oh, I'm sorry. Can we start in the room? Leslie?
Thank you for coming. What is the criteria for, to get the space for free or discounted rate? Because I believe you had something at PS3 came, or did, I could be wrong, and
You're
did
right.
something, and I know there are a lot of like public schools that need to do fundraisers, or, so what is the criteria that, hey, you know, since you are a public school or you are a public entity or, you know, a nonprofit, do you know what I mean? What is the criteria to either get it for free or discounted rate?
Yep. So yes, you are correct about PS3. The criteria are New York City based artist or organization, primarily from a historically excluded community or art form, with a moment of inflection and a unique need for our space. PS3, of course, of all the ones to bring up, is an interesting example. The school was struggling in a big way from their fundraising post-pandemic. The rate of families that left the school was very high, and they had a significant drop in the PTA funding. And their PTA funding goes directly to their arts programming at that school. So it is the theater salary, the 2 music teachers, the clay teacher. So the case from that perspective met enough of our criteria, and the event itself had a big performance component. The parents are a band. So we tried it, and I will also, full disclosure, my daughter is in kindergarten there. Or this year she's in first grade. When the event happened, she was in kindergarten, which is how they, I think, found us, truthfully. Let's be honest, New York City is small. But I don't make the final decision. This is like, we go through the criteria as a team. Everyone agreed, like, okay, let's try this. So that would be true of any community organization or school that wanted to come work with us. We have found that schools are interested in working here, and there are a lot of them. And so we have had to get this year, and even going into next year, very discerning about, is this truly a tight match with the arts? If it's not, we want to introduce schools to other places that could be supportive of their events. But when the tie is directly going so much to like the core of the school is based in the arts, and this is a funding mechanism for it, we will try and be supportive if we can.
Great. So if we pass your name on to PS33, because they have a lot of underserved, and they always struggle to find a space.
Please do. You know what?
Okay.
Again, while we're chatting, so my daughter went to pre-K there, and I have reached out to them. So if you have we would love to work with them. I think there hasn't quite been the right match. If you want to surface that to one of your contacts there, we would love to do something with them.
Thank you.
David?
Just quickly, could a local political club meet there? Have their meetings there or reception there?
if you're doing ballet.
Well,
Oh, you know what, you can, I would say, you should reach out and ask, if it's a community gathering and there is space in the calendar and the lift is low, we don't have like formal political activity here. But if the community board ever wanted to meet in person,
No, I'm not talking about the committee. Let me be fully honest here. My local Democrat club, if they wanted to have a meeting or a reception there, would you would that be included or that can't be because of certain laws and regulations? How does that work?
You know what, you should email me and we can talk about it a bit more offline. It's not like a straight up the center what Chelsea Factory does, and honestly what would be prioritized among our calendar. But because we exist for the city, if there is a date that isn't being used and it aligns, we're not going to let it sit empty here. So it's never like a flat out no. And you should feel free to email me, which is my email is just Lauren. I can put it in the chat at chelseafactory.org.
There is no chat.
There is no chat.
I can share it.
Yes, I'll give it to you,
I'll share
David.
Great.
David. Charlie, go ahead.
Thanks so much, Lauren, for the presentation. It's great to learn about this great space. And yeah, partly had the same question as Leslie. It's interesting to hear about how schools can get involved. I was curious too, if you've ever done any events in front of the building or if you've ever taken advantage of, like a block party type thing, because that's another thing that the community board would do, would be, approve a block party if you guys had need to activate and bring arts out into the, to the street, close off the street, that kind of thing.
Awesome. Corporate events have done that, and perhaps you've been aware of some of that. We have done block parties. They've all been inside. There's total interest in someday getting that out on the street. So that's great to know. And hopefully you will hear from me with such a request in the not too distant future.
Awesome.
I've got a quick question. Thanks, Lauren, for the presentation. Just overall, I'm curious sort of what sort of the comeback is looking like from your perspective in terms of rehearsal space that's affordable for artists in the community. If there are other challenges that you're hearing within the industry that you all are sort of trying to address, just sort of thinking about, how do we come back as a city and support our arts and culture spaces?
I love that question. How you can support the arts is come see them. I will start there. And then the first part of the question is, it has been so erratic. And I think we all thought initially it'll be erratic. We are not sure what the behavior is, and then it'll even out. Or organizations struggled a lot in the pandemic and it'll be rocky for a little bit and then they'll find their footing. And we are not seeing that. It's much more rippled. And I think two key factors are that it's not just about bringing audiences back. Audiences have fundamentally changed. People have learned to consume in a different way and view the world in a different way after being shut down for 2+ years. And the behavior landscape has changed in a way that I think organizations are still wrestling with exactly what it is you should expect from an audience, and the more institutional places that have been around and have relied on these very predictable patterns of ticket buying, it's just not going to come back to what that was. And so what the new normal is, we are living through figuring that out. And similarly, funding for organizations. It was like, oh, we all struggled so much in COVID. We had to cut. There was relief funding from the government that was huge and transformational for many organizations. And now that is gone. And organizations have had to take a hard look at which programs they're cutting. Chelsea Factory is doing our best to catch those in the air and be like, don't cut, just keep them here for a little bit until you can figure out how to get them back in. A lot of times that's the pipeline development programs, the new talent, or the giving opportunity to historically excluded voices and designers and creators. And we're trying to catch those before they get cut. And as organizations are piecing that back together, what the budgets look like and what their life looks like post cutting some of these programs, that is also not solved. And so it's been very interesting to be in this seat at Chelsea Factory where we do so much listening. And we all predicted that, you know, by this time in our life, we would kind of be like, oh, we sort of figured it out. Now we get to do cool and interesting things. And we are continually surprised by feeling like, wow, we're still wrestling with some of these really deep, knotty challenges that we saw right out of the pandemic.
Thank you. Into the question. Yeah.
Mike?
Mike, you just come off mute, you can ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. My name's Mike Freeman. I'm a band leader, musician, and producer from the Hell's Kitchen neighborhood, and I've been at Manhattan Plaza for decades at this point. I'm not sure if you're aware of Manhattan Plaza, but it is a building of performing artists, which was one of the original high-rise buildings on the west side. And I have been advocating for a long time for local musicians and performers of this area to be able to take advantage of some of all of this development that has happened around us. And we have for a very long time been excluded from all of those performance opportunities. So my question to you is that something that we could possibly work together? Actually, I had a meeting with Tamara
Yeah.
McCaw from the Shed, and she suggested that we connect. So I'm glad we got a chance to talk tonight. But also, I'm wondering if I'm hearing, it sounds like the space is open, but it doesn't sound like you have funding or budgeting to put on performances. Is that true or not?
First of all, nice to meet you, and we should absolutely talk. So Lauren at chelseafactory.org is my email.
Great.
Love Tamara. The way our partnerships work when we agree to work with an organization or ensemble is it is all highly subsidized production support. We have an incredible production team here, a full-time technical director and director of production. And then for each project, based on the scope of what it is, we bring on additional crew to run production on them. So we don't design, we don't do the artistic side, but the execution of the equipment that we have in-house, we absolutely bring that to the table.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand. Do you have funding to pay for performances? Is yes or no?
I'm misunderstanding the question. When you say pay for performances, you mean pay artists to perform here?
Correct.
So when we do a partnership, we provide in-kind space and in-kind production support. And then sometimes some rentals, but we don't pay artist fees or designer fees.
Okay. Yeah.
And we don't commission.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get at.
Okay.
Okay. So it's kind of getting back to what I was saying. We should definitely try to talk. It would be interesting also. I'm not a representative of, but I work with the Jazz Foundation of America, and that's the kind of possibility that we could work on together. So I just wanted to introduce myself and try to get that point across, that there are a number of musicians and artists from this neighborhood that I feel should be called upon and drawn upon for some of these performance spaces and some of these performance opportunities that are happening here that currently are not being utilized. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. I look forward to talking more.
Great.
Thank you for that, Mike. I think we're finished with the questions. So I just want to give a big thank you to Lauren for stopping in tonight. Sounds like you guys are doing great work, and I hope to see something there very soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me, and to be continued. I look forward to talking with everyone more.
Absolutely. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Jesse, should we move into Manhattan Youth since we don't have?
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we do that? I think that's smart.
All right, so next we have Brittany Mayha she is the Director of Middle School After-School Programs at Manhattan Youth. So she's here to talk a little bit about Manhattan Youth, or some of us who may not be familiar with it. And also really curious to know how you all are funded, where we have a discussion tonight about proposed cuts to education. So we just want to make sure that we have an understanding of this important resource and how you guys are funded.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Brittany Mejia. Thank you for having me tonight. It's great to talk about what we do, and especially the funding. I know that's important, especially with discussions about what the mayor is planning to do for the upcoming year. So basically, Manhattan Youth has been around for more than 30 years in Lower Manhattan. It started off, our executive director founded it. Basically, there was a need 30 plus years ago for childcare, and he started a community center and basically just wanted to address the childcare need for working families. At this time, we have 22 middle schools that we oversee. We have one high school program, and these 23 sites are all funded by DYCD. So we are funded by the city. We also have 6 elementary schools, which are paid programs, and most of those are all downtown schools. So they're all below 14th Street. And then we have one community center in Battery Park City. Our 22 middle schools and our one high school are all over Manhattan. So we have Upper East Side, Upper West Side, Midtown, downtown. The only location we don't have is in Chinatown. So if I recall, I think we are in CB1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. We just don't have any schools in CB3. But within our middle schools and our high schools, we offer sports, leadership opportunities, STEM, arts. With STEM, we have a very rigorous Lego program that we work on. We work with the First Lego League throughout the city. Our students compete nationally. We've had teams go and compete at the University of Arkansas. With our arts, we produce theater productions. So our schools they decide what show they're going to do, and then they produce like Legally Blonde or Matilda, and they do a very big theater production quarterly or per trimester, but they usually do 1 to 2 depending on the program. With leadership programs, we offer debate, student council, all these extra opportunities for the students to develop themselves, especially in getting them ready for high school. What I know with our CB4, we have, I believe, 3 schools in your community board area. We have Lab Middle School, which is, I believe, on 17th. Then we have Quest to Learn on 18th, and we have City Knoll, which is on 53rd and between 9th and 10th, and Professional Performing Arts School, PPAS, which is, I think, 47th and 9th Ave. So we have 4 schools in your community board. Right now, we're trying to continue to maintain our partnerships with our principals and school communities, especially with the cuts. And there are RFPs coming up where we have to do a proposal to continue to have our services and to continue to be the provider for these schools. But we've been doing this with our middle schools, with the ones that we have probably for the last like 8 years. We've had 22 middle schools. We originally started, I believe, with 4, and that was maybe 20 years ago. But you know, we're trying to do as best as we can to continue to build those partnerships, like I said, and just make sure that we can continue our funding. Being that our middle schools are funded by DYCD, we're not really allowed to fundraise. So that is mostly all funding from the city. Our elementary schools are different because they're paid programs, and as well as our community center. But I think that's basically the gist of what we do.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, this is such an important initiative, resource for children, for middle school, because I don't think, you said you've been around for 30 years. Have you been also funded for that amount of time by the city? No.
No,
Right.
DYCD started with de Blasio. He did his schools out in New York City, his Sonic program. That was about 9 years ago. So we started then and we just kept expanding.
Yeah, that's just critical to know, because the after-school programming for elementary school kids is not funded by the city. So that is out of pocket. But I guess de Blasio really wanted to see middle school. I mean, it's such a popular program, first of all. I mean, this is not like you're, just like childcare or just kids hanging out. I mean, you guys put on real production theater. They've got real sports going on. I mean, I've really seen it. My daughter's participated. It's just really excellent programming, and it's needed for these kids. They need to be, off the streets. Their parents are often working and nobody's at home when the kids get out of school. So it's very, very helpful to have these programs and just to help, in this developmental age. So does anybody have any questions? Let's start with anyone in the room.
I have one question.
Leslie?
Thank you for the presentation, and the explanation. Has the city given you any indication on the cuts?
They have not. Our program managers have said that they might be coming, but they're not giving us a criteria on what it is based on. So that's why we're still continuing to try to build as much of a partnership with our principals, be visible with our parents, and try to just answer to any of the community needs, just to make sure that they know that we're there, so that we can continue to advocate for us in those particular schools.
So there's no indication of how severe or how, or if the whole program will be wiped, you have no idea, or there's no indication? Okay.
There's no indication on, all we know is that they are looking at particular criteria, but we don't know what. So our program manager's like, hey, it's up in the air. We don't know. We're hearing from the mayor's office that there's cuts coming, but we're not sure as of what. So they're not able to guide us in what we need to focus on, or how to continue to advocate for ourselves, which is difficult, because these are people's jobs. These are our families who are relying on us next year. And if they cut the programs, then it puts us and them in a sticky situation.
I think the cuts are going to the agencies first. So it'll be DY, that'll get cut, and then it'll talk to council. They don't know how that's going to affect them until different rounds of cuts come in. So everybody's in limbo in that second.
Brittany, do you know how you all fared in the city budget last year? And were there any cuts to your programs in the last year's budget?
In regards to how much we usually get, or just the contracts, because our contracts have been the same amount for the last 5 years. We haven't got an increase or decrease in our funding. So that's been the same.
Okay, got it. Any other questions? Yeah.
Anyone online have a question? Nope. Okay, great.
I have a question.
Oh, yes,
But it's
sorry,
just-
Maria, go ahead.
I'm just curious how come, I heard you mention you're not able to get private funding because you receive funding from DYCD.
Yes, because we receive funding from DYCD, we're not allowed to fundraise in particular, because they're already providing us a sufficient amount. So it would have to go to our community center or our paid programs, just because, everything is branded by DYCD. It's not that they have ownership, but it's more like they're providing the means for us to provide these services. So we have to just follow their guidelines.
There, okay. All right, thank you.
No problem.
I think this has been great, Brittany. We may have some follow-up questions for you later if, we do need to write a letter, so we will certainly. Yes.
Are you thinking of writing a letter to it? Because
Oh, yeah, we're thinking of it, so we can talk about it.
after.
Yes, yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Brittany. It's very nice seeing you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for having me. Have a great evening, everyone.
Okay, thank you. So we are steamrolling ahead, Jesse.
Yeah.
You could do 57. What?
What?
Did you do 57? Just keep going.
57?
Last.
Pier 57. Yes, sorry, yes. Let's do it. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I was.
So we have Pier 57 Community Classroom with us this evening. And first, just want to say thank you for hosting us a couple of times. It's been really great. Are they on the call?
They are, Natalie's on the call.
Okay, wonderful. So.
Can you guys
Natalie,
hear me
are you ready?
Yes, you might need to speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'm on my home desktop, and it's not as normal as my computer at work. But let me share my screen. First off, thank you for having me. I work with Jesse closely. We're always happy to host the community board at our spaces, but for those that don't know, I'll go over the community classrooms. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then let me do a slideshow. Okay, well, first, I'm Natalie Mindell. I manage the community classrooms at Pier 57. I work for Jamestown, and Jamestown was hired, or we've actually been working with Google for, I think, over 10 years, but Google hired us to develop the ground floor at Pier 57 and manage it. So for those that don't know, Pier 57 is a very cool space. There's Google offices upstairs, but the ground floor is open to the public. It has a food hall, and then the back half of the property has a living room space, which is open to the public, community classrooms, which are completely free. Then I'm going to go over the community classroom shortly. Hudson River Park Trust has a discovery tank in the classroom as well. It's an interactive gallery for kids. And the James Pier Foundation also has an open demo kitchen and event space. And then the rooftop, I'm sure everyone in this room has been to the public rooftop park. But I'm here to speak about the classrooms. I'm the booking manager. So there are 3 community spaces. We have the Daffodil Room, Seahorse Classroom, and Oyster Classroom. They all fit 74 standing and come with 40 seats. We say Seahorse has 25 to 40 seats, depending on the room configuration that you use. Daffodil and Seahorse can be a combined room to fit 80 seats or 140 people. The rooms are very spacious. The 74 max is only there due to fire code, but it's actually a good sized room for all 3 spaces. They're fully tech enabled. These classrooms are free for community groups and nonprofits. The only booking criteria, really the main booking criteria, is that no commercial use. There can't be any sales inside the classrooms, and you cannot charge admission to attend any events that take place in the classrooms. But if you are a community group or nonprofit wanting to have a meeting, wanting to do an educational class, a community building event, we welcome you to use our space. The classrooms can be booked on this website right here, pier57nyc.com/bookings. And I actually am more here to let you know about how our year went. We opened April 1st. This is my December snapshot, but just in December alone, we had 74 bookings, over 2,000 visitors to the classroom, and the rooms were utilized at 52%. The last week of the year actually had no bookings, so to be at 52% just for the first 3 weeks of the month was pretty positive. And here are some of our highlights since April. We have served 166 community groups and nonprofits. We've only been open since April 1st, so not even a full year yet. September welcomed the most community groups. We had 58 organizations in 1 month, and 35 of those groups were first-time users. October had the highest utilization rate at 63%, and Seahorses was the most utilized in 2023. And then some year-to-date averages, or monthly averages. We have about 79 events per month, about 2,300 attendees to the classrooms, and about 366 hours booked per month. And you can see all the data below. The top users or groups that used the classrooms last year were the Children's Museum of Arts, Speak Higher times Department of Education had an English learners tech class, and they had 15 classes. And then there's our third top user was a Pier writing and critique group class that was free to the public, hosted by like a licensed social worker named Santiago Marquez, who lives in Uptown. And this is just my December programming spotlight. We had New York City Public Schools and Google held a Computer Science Education Week showcase. As you can see, the room is very successful. They had high attendance. A really cool program on December 12th, Cornell Tech and NYC EDC hosted a pilot policy lab where New York government agencies delivered 2-minute pitches on urban tech pilot projects they wish to run in 2024. And then just another group to highlight, first-time user Folsom Street East, who's an LGBTQ nonprofit, held their first annual meeting in person since the pandemic. And then just some new community groups in December. I could send this to you guys after, but here you'd be able to click on the marketing brochure, our website, and our catering booklet. And are there any questions?
Yes, I'm sure we'll have, I'll start. What is the criteria for, or is there a criteria for any organization asking to book in these classrooms?
Yeah, this is like a brief eligibility points. It goes into more details in the brochure on our website, but essentially you have to be a nonprofit or local community group. You can't be a private company. There's very rare cases where a private company can use the classroom. So if they're having a free and open event to all and like there's no sales being made, but we prioritize community groups and nonprofits. We have to make sure that the event is free to attend. There's no fundraising taking place. There's no sales, but and we do want like the classrooms were originally designed to be a community builder, if you will. We wanted people to be able to walk by and join a class if they wanted to learn something new, or like maybe like we have a toddlers class every Tuesday. Maybe you're like walking through the neighborhood and you want to meet moms in the area, and then you can pop in with your kids. However, it's evolved, and there's so many nonprofits that don't have a home base that most of our utilization, or like about half of it, is board meetings, employee training, strategy development, that kind of thing. But to answer your question, I would say the top eligibility requirements is that you're a nonprofit in a local community group and you're not doing any no commercial uses taking place.
Gotcha.
So otherwise, like, I mean, as you can see, the numbers are really high. It's pretty, I mean, yeah, we're a popular resource on the community.
I've got a question. I saw that the Children's Museum has like 61 bookings, which seems like they're the top user. Just curious, I know that they're in CV2, but are they like the use of the space, or are they like, do they know something that other groups don't? I'm just curious, are they working on a project there that's requires a certain amount of book? I'm just wondering why.
Yeah, no, great question. So we, they got connected to us. Google connected us to them before we opened. So they were already like knew about this for a while, if that makes sense. And they applied for, they're here twice a week having a free and open, it's called Open Artist Studio, and kids come after school on Mondays and Thursdays from 3 to 5, and they do different art activities.
So it's an open, we say open artist, so it's the museum is hosting an event in that space where people can come in?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess Children's Museum of the Arts in the last few months also lost their home base. So I think that's also why their bookings increased at the Pier. And we do take reoccurring bookings, however, we do take them in 3-month increments. So that, because we want to spread the love and we do want to like have everyone have an opportunity to have the spaces. But we can take reoccurring bookings. If it's once a month, we could do it for the year. Like, for example, the community board once a month is having their Chelsea Land Use Committee meeting. That we do things like monthly bookings are easier to get. But if you want to have something once a week, every week for 3 months, you would put in the application. It's a really short form on our website, and then we would screen it. And then if needed, sometimes if it's recurring, I'll need like just a 1-page proposal or just a little bit more information on what you want to host in our space. But otherwise, if it's available on the calendar, and if it's available, you'll get a booking agreement. Don't go on a calendar.
Anyone else?
I'll just say again, I mean, I'm saying it publicly, Natalie, thank you so much for all of your support for the community board meetings. You know, it's a learning curve for all of us in the new hybrid world. And so your guys' space is one of the few that's pretty, you know, has everything in it and already, you know, figured out. And so it's an amazing resource to have. And I'm really grateful for the partnership with you and Jamestown and Google.
Us too.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Very nice meeting you.
Just a quick
You too.
question.
I'll send Jesse the PowerPoint in case anyone wants to do it.
It's a little unrelated and it's very parochial on my part. The community board sometimes meets there. Is there secure indoor bike parking? And if so, where? Because a few times, the one time that I'm trying to go, I did not take my bike because I was afraid to leave it outside. I didn't know, I didn't want to bring it inside because so I didn't know the logistics. Could you?
Yeah, that is interesting. Believe it or not, in this huge asset, we don't have ground floor bike parking, but we are always taking suggestions, and maybe I can bring this to my team and see if there's something we can do. The building is a complicated asset. It's owned by the Hudson River Park Trust. So, and then the 100-year lease is RXR, and then Google has the main lease, and then Jamestown works for Google. So even just putting in something as simple as like a bike rack does take a lot of approvals, but at the moment we don't have them. But I will put that.
I don't mean just the bike, but make sure it's secure though. Meaning it's indoors or something like that, so someone can't, you know, there's like a guard, you have security.
Right. I was thinking like an indoor bike rack, but right, like a bike room or something. Yeah, we don't have a bike yet.
Okay. That wraps it up. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We have so much free space in our.
I know. That sounds really good.
Thanks, Natalie.
Good, because they get huge tax breaks and stuff.
Hold on.
Okay.
No. I think maybe you want to go on
Cannabis.
and then we track down our councilman.
Okay, because we wanted to wait for our council member to discuss the budget cuts. She may have some more information that we do not. So we can start our discussion on the cannabis drug use panel. I put a letter in the Dropbox. I don't know if you've had time to review it. We were not able to really have a discussion on whether we wanted to write a letter or not because it was a panel. So I just sort of documented everything that happened on it and then opening up for the discussion now. Any thoughts? It was a great panel, by the way.
Yeah,
It was a fantastic.
I think the report that you distributed is a good basis for a report to the city or the other agencies. It's a letter, basically. Really good. I think my takeaway from the whole thing is education. I think there's a lack, or I would say it's a lack, but I think DOT can certainly do a lot more. The city could do a lot more, involving the parents and just trying to get them involved with the whole concept of what's happening in these schools, not that they don't know about it, not that they said that they don't care about it, they certainly do care about it, but I don't know if they have any idea what to do, and how to do it, who to go to, what information they can get.
Yeah, I think it's just a good way to also memorialize the conversation that we had, because there was so much information. And a lot of it was, I mean, some of it was pretty dense in terms of, it was the whole sort of science and how they were studying it and the different evaluations. And then there's actually sort of like the programming that's going on at the school level, preventive, as well as, you know, what do you do with like some concrete examples if someone is, you know, caught smoking in the school, and sort of what are the steps to escalate? And so it covered a lot. And so I think the letter does a really good job summarizing that conversation. The one thing that I think is important for the schools is, you know, with these, in the context of city budget cuts and what's going to be happening, I mean, we're still in limbo. But this is a potential, once we sort of get to a place where this is more streamlined, for additional revenue to come into the school to probably and hopefully help support some of these programs that are happening in the school. So I think it's something to continue the conversation on, as far as how that money is actually being used and how much of it is going back to the Department of Education, if any.
I was not at the program, but would this be treated different than the kids who are drinking and smoking cigarettes? I don't, you know, they go with weed, I don't know. What is there procedures already in place for booze and cigarettes?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. And I don't know what that difference is offhand. But their whole philosophy right now is around sort of like harm reduction and not penalizing students to the extent where they're missing a tremendous amount of school, and they're trying to figure out how do we stop this in the first place. And so a lot of that is about educating not only the students, but the parents and how to involve them. But yeah, it is different depending on what happens with
Right,
the
but
school,
we
whether
want to
they're drinking.
educate kids about liquor and cigarettes. I mean,
Sure,
when
yeah.
I was younger, I mean, I'm ancient. You know,
Yeah, we had DARE, I remember growing up.
we used to smoke cigarettes in the bathroom, you know. And I hope they're not doing that anymore, because it's very bad.
Well, vaping is the big thing.
Pardon?
Vaping
Oh,
is
vaping,
what's
right,
what's happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the major difference here is at what age it's starting, how early kids are using drugs, and what actual effect it has on their growth, and their mental growth, and their physical growth. Well, not physical, but also mental growth. So as opposed to drinking in high school, or drinking in junior high school, you get drunk, you throw up, and you know,
Right.
you get up the next morning and you go out and play football, right? You do the work that this particular person, I forget the doctor's name, has been doing is examining the effect on brain, on formation of the brain, in that aspect. So it's a big difference in terms of just, you know, like you said, when we used to smoke, we used to drink, and, you know, get on with our lives afterwards. But the fact that it's happening earlier is having a bigger impact on kids maturing, you know, mental capacity.
But I do all three, if you're drinking younger, you smoke.
It's more chemical, it's more chemical. I mean, I don't know how effect, you know, what effect alcohol is going to have. I'm sure it does have. an effect.
Yeah, that's a total chemical, but weed is natural, it's in the ground.
Not
Well,
anymore,
yeah,
not
not
anymore.
anymore.
It's not, she said there's no natural weed anymore.
I heard
We
that
know
it
it.
is the weed that's made now, is not like your grandmother's.
That's
It's
right.
what she
Well,
said.
very more potent.
Yeah,
But it's extremely potent.
Yes,
Now,
yes,
for smoking
basically,
weed.
that's the.
Very, very.
Yeah, they're using synthetics now to make it stronger, and what's happening is that they're trying to raise the, I think it's the THC, the euphoria aspect of it, and bringing down the CBD. And so basically the weed that maybe you and I grew up with, there's only a very little strain of that left now, of the actual flower that's being used. So that's the danger, and they say over long term, there's actually a study that it has sort of a thinning on the, it's a thinning of the brain, a part of the brain. There's an actual thinning of a part of the brain in the child's development. So that's, you know, that could be, you know.
I mean, it's not healthy.
Consequences, it's not good.
You ingesting smoke.
Right, so the point is that, you know, I think parents need to be educated about it, even teachers, school communities, about how powerful this new, what they call them cannabinoids. They don't even want to use the term cannabis anymore. They're actually cannabinoids are. And the way that you ingest it is also very different because people are using vape cartridges, which are about this big, very narrow. A kid can hold it in their hand like this and nobody would ever see it. And because there's no smoke, you could just go and vape in the hallway and in the bathroom, back at the classroom, whatever. And the vape, taking it into the vape, you're taking in much more, I think up to 20 to 50% more than you would through a standard smoking a joint. So it's complete, the game is completely
It's
changed.
different,
Very
if
different.
you watch the separate, it's there would be that place, okay.
Do you have a question?
No, I was gonna add to it that the other challenge, is just the whole category of edibles. So unlike alcohol, where you can smell it, smoking weed, you can smell it, cigarettes, you can smell it, edibles opened up this entire other challenge where you can just literally do it in the classroom. And so I think that is what I really appreciated about, it was scary to open to a lot of it, but it was also, what I enjoyed was that by taking a science-backed approach, it's very different than the DARE program that I went through in school, because it's about better choices versus punitive.
Yes.
This, if you do this, you're gonna get in trouble. You do this, you're gonna get suspended for 10 days. You're gonna get, and that idea of like, no, it's actually just, this is a truly harm reduction. This is truly a part of your health. I think it's really important. The only way that's gonna sink in is through a ton of education, which I think, so I think it's great to memorialize this in this letter. And I think it's something that we will likely need to check in on often, especially as more and more cannabis shops legally are opened in the city, because it's just such a, it's gonna be a problem for a while, and it's going to be a problem we have to continue to remind people of, especially with all these budget cuts. I don't know that a ton of money is going to get funneled to this way, but.
We also had a really good young person that was participating on the discussion in a way to sort of engage more young people in the conversation, because I think when it comes to like, how do you actually change behavior, who are they gonna listen to? It's gonna be from their peers. And so I think thinking about that as a committee, how do we engage more young people in that conversation? What does that look like? Because I thought that person that was on was great.
Alex, yeah,
And,
that's true.
nice to see that type of involvement.
Do you think, I know do you think there's a line there about mentioning about the illegal shops? Do you think we should push harder on that in the letter?
I mean,
Because there is a line from Dr. Bird that I read,
Right.
and she's saying that she feels frustrated that electives, or people shouldn't use the word electives, but people are, she says, willing to sacrifice kids and young people for the right to have these, access to this.
We
So maybe-
can, but I think the,
What do you
what it
feel?
really is that it's the companies who are making these cannabinoids, and they will be, they're legal. Right, they're making them stronger and stronger to attract more kids, so I don't really know if the smoke shops, I mean, yes, we can push on that a little bit. I think that honestly, the cannabis working group should really be pushing on that, but I'm happy to,
Yeah, I don't know.
more about it.
I don't think that they.
But
Did
I.
anyone Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to finish by saying that I did reach out to Kelly, our superintendent, because he had to leave the meeting early, just to see what his final thoughts were. And his feeling is that the emotional learning, the social emotional learning for kids is so important at an early age. They need to understand how to deal with stress, so then when they get older, they can make better choices, because that's the bottom line, like it's the kid's choice. So, we can do all, that we want, the reality is it's out of the box, the cat is out of the box. One way or the other, they're gonna get it. So the point is that how do you reach kids at a very young age and get them to understand or give them some sort of tactics to deal with stress, because that, so it's a part of life, so.
And I think the illegal smoke shops obviously increase potentially the ease with, to a degree, but I agree, like, they're gonna get it regardless. And I think one of the challenges from an education standpoint is with legalization, it feels like, oh, it's a green, like, that's a stamp of approval that this is a healthy thing. Like, why would you legalize it if it's not healthy?
Right.
And so that, and I'm thinking from an adult perspective, that I think a lot of adults feel that way. So I think that's an important piece of the education as well, just to say, this is legal, not all the shops are legal, but this has been legalized, but that doesn't make it the right choice for you. And that's still, that's enough.
That's actually a really excellent one, only because I've seen, like, I've been, like, I hang out at some of the Starbucks in my office. And some of the high school kids come out and they're smoking, I see the safety guide, you know, and I hear them saying, well, it's legal now, like they think it's okay. And so it's a good point that we associate it with not bad for you or.
The important thing is a lot of these companies, probably like the cigarette companies did years ago, liquor companies, are trying to target the young. So we gotta be careful with that. And the thing is, the emphasis on people, it's more for my generation is to let them know that this is not the weed that we grew up with. Because to be honest, I didn't think of it, it's a big deal. Until you mentioned it tonight. So that's important. So the adults can be on board with this. And I suspect we'll probably end up regulating these weed shops the way we regulate liquor. And this is just pure speculation. It'll be, they'll close down the bootleg weed shops. Eventually, they'll go through like community boards, our BLP, and there'll be the equivalent of SLA. That won't help that much for the youth. But that's what I foresee happening. And my big issue, if we're thinking about the youth, is advertisement in that area.
You mean like public service announcements?
Literally, I'm saying the opposite, the companies, the capitalist companies, advertising, doing subtle messages to the youth, which creates peer pressure. So
Oh, yeah,
it's
right.
one thing in the schools,
Yeah.
in the schools, they can tell you it's scientific.
Mhm.
But when you're a kid and you're peer pressure, first of all, you think you're immortal, and you don't, I mean, I know from when I was a kid, I didn't foresee being the age that I'm at now.
Not-
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's part of the issue, it's gonna be peer pressure, and the corporations know that, and that's how they're gonna target. So we have to think of a way to stop that somehow, I don't know.
Yeah, no, the education component, I'm sorry, Alan, just.
And I have a question about the event.
I do wanna, because the educating the youth is on just the potency is important, because what the mayor's office is doing right now is they have a listening cannabis tour. So they're going to different neighborhoods and talking to people, but I think what the focus really is kind of what the cannabis working group is doing, is saying, well, these smoke shops that you're seeing right now, they're illegal, don't buy from them. The cannabis, the dispensaries are opening slowly, here's where you need to buy, because that's what's supposedly safe. The problem is that there's still going to be, it's still a different weed anyway. Right, so this, and I think that has to be a part of the education, that the weed itself has changed, it's no longer the plant that we once knew. Whether they want to do that or not is another story, but. I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
I had a question.
I think in terms of peer pressure, I think what we saw with the young man from high school is something the city should maybe take a better look at and form up maybe some peer pressure on that end in terms of having young folks, instead of having adults saying blah blah blah, whatever they're doing now, is maybe have these discussions amongst themselves and have someone like that young man lead a discussion and maybe develop a whole department of youth to go out and speak in individual schools.
Yeah, I think they are doing some of that, it's maybe not be led by a child, but from what I understand in my daughter's school. The person, well, first of all, they meet the kids where they are. And what she will say to people, I can't stop you from doing what you're gonna do. Like, you're gonna do what you're gonna do. It's gonna be your choice. All I can do is tell you what, kind of like what the risks are and kind of get them to think about it in another way. But they joke, they like, it's a very open kind of feeling, and people talk about all kinds of stuff in there. So I think the SAPSIS people are doing a great job. But I agree that there should be more opportunities for like community leadership in this, so.
One question I had is I heard twice mentioned during this discussion, harm reduction. Is that something that came up as part of the narrative during the event?
It came up as like a strategy as how they are addressing students who are either, caught using within a school. And how do they sort of address that? Because the traditional way was punitive in terms of suspension or expulsion, whatever it was. That wasn't working. And so I think they are thinking about how do we get to more of a preventive place. And there are certain things, I think they're still holding kids accountable for what they're doing, but I think it's not quite as, they're not like suspending kids weeks at a time for it. But the harm reduction is their strategy overall.
harm reduction looks like the education piece.
I think that's part of it, right? It's mostly around education. Trying to think if it was another. Yeah.
And I'm curious if anyone from the cannabis working group attended.
I'm on the working group and I attended, I wasn't part of the panel discussion. But you attended.
Jesse, I actually have a question. So I talked to Jesse Greenwald about this, not in depth, but the cannabis working group though hasn't really dived into any of the issues, neighborhood issues, right? They're mostly doing they're just kind of going down the permit list, right? They haven't really gotten to the nitty gritty of problems or writing letters about, or am I wrong?
Well, I did initially wrote a pretty extensive letter that you guys voted out back in 23. I think we've had a follow-up letter on the agenda, but the reality is that the last meeting went till
It's all right.
because we're dealing with
Approvals, right?
approvals. I will say, I think we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel in these applications because we're not just getting the same amount. We're just, the geography is drying up and the deadline for review by OCM is over. So it's really like OCM now has this batch of applications to choose from and to approve. Like I said, my understanding is the one that we did review at the beginning of the whole process back in July actually is going to be opening. That will be the first license. And so therefore, everything 1,000 feet around that is not going to have any license cannabis. So they're probably, I'm assuming we'll probably get 2 or 3 more and that will be it. Because there just won't be any more geography sticking in that area. So the real desire is that for those few that would get licensed in our area to survive, there has to be enforcement. There has to be strong enforcement for them to actually work as a program.
Yeah.
So. So you have this letter. You got general support, I feel.
Anyone online?
Okay, do we need to take a vote on actually the writing of the letter, because we never even did that?
Yes, yeah, if you guys would like to send some version of this letter, there needs to be.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
The version of Josephine's letter.
All right, can we get the,
All in favor?
all in favor? Everybody online, is that yep, all right, unanimous? I think it's everybody, so there wasn't gonna be any abstentions or feelings. So I have texted and with everybody I know over at the Yale River Camp. I don't have it yet, so I don't know if you just want to continue on.
Yeah, I think-
School budget conversation, shops.
School budgets.
Sure, this committee discussion here.
Yes. That's one.
Yeah, so I think this is just an open discussion about sort of the upcoming proposed budget and the cuts that are looming to the Department of Education. All city agencies are going to be facing what right now looks to be about a 5% budget cut across the board. This was released in the mayor's preliminary November plan. Right now, the city council has responded to that. And it is gonna be a back and forth. Every year there's threats to the budget. This one seems to be a bit more real with the mayor, largely saying that because of the migrant crisis, the city is about, I think, $4 billion short of where they need to be. So it's not a great picture. The mayor's trying to seek assistance at the state and federal level without much success. So it's going to be a budget fight to restore and save as many programs as possible for this upcoming budget. I think the big question out there is what is it going to look like for our schools? Many of them are already facing really tough budget conditions where they have to pull together money from the PTA to support after-school program, in-school programming. So it's gonna, I think, have a real unfortunate negative impact on our schools. There was also last year, there was a lot of budget confusion about what the city council was voting on. I don't know if folks remember that, but there was this whole new formula about how they were calculating how much schools would receive. Hopefully that won't be the case this budget year. And I think they have a new formula to sort of figure that out. So there's a little more equity built into it, but that being the case, I think it's still going to be a difficult budget season for our schools. I don't know if there was anything more in terms of a discussion or other points, but I think we just kind of wanted to open it up and yeah.
Let's not forget the libraries.
And libraries, right, so libraries will also be facing a budget cut. I think when it comes to the other, and that's a good point, and one of the things that we should also keep an eye out for, so while the city agencies are going to be looking for that 5% reduction, we don't know what that will look like when it comes to some of the discretionary capital funds that help support our libraries through those renovations. So like Muhlenberg, for example, received millions of dollars of city council discretionary funds, which historically have not been cut, but it's some of the programming cuts that come at the agency level that I think is largely what these cuts are gonna impact. Now, it may have an impact on capital as well, and some of the discretionary budget that a lot of our libraries need, like the Columbus branch needs like a new roof, which is all capital. And you know, I'm sure there's lots of other things, but
Are you envisioning a letter?
Well, I think we should open it up to, I don't know how much information, we're kind of operating in the dark a little bit without knowing what happened, but I do think I think it would be important to be on the record. But I think we need to be clear on what the ask is. So we should think about what that should
Isn't the
look like.
budget this close?
Yeah, so-
On this whole.
No.
Don't we do a general?
Will we do a general,
Right.
like the mayor in February, right? Is it February, January, February, he'll come with his proposed budget, but we have talked about, I mean, at Budget Task Force about specific agencies and different programs. And actually, Christine was the one who brought this up, and there is, as you said, a proposed cut across the board, right? And Christine mentioned this, a few others mentioned this, that we are very much against across the board cut. They should do the hard work and prioritize, you know, because maybe take 3% from schools and more somewhere, like they shouldn't just do a flat, you know, we're cutting here, because it's not looking at separate problems and prioritizing those issues or those programs. If I were to propose a letter, I would say that education is a top priority. And me even being on parks can understand that education after school programs, because if you fund those, you are helping all these other problems that the city is having, right? Kids after school, marijuana, whatever it is. So if you fund, I think that I would propose that this committee would send a very strong letter, saying no cuts across the board, B, education is a priority, and if you don't see that, you're blind. And see that all these, the proposed across the board cut would be hurting, and then I guess you can prioritize whatever the programs are, you know, after school, how important these are to other agencies, you know, how it affect other groups and agencies. And if you fix this or help fix this, it would be fixing other programs that you don't have to put money in.
Yeah, no, that's a good point in terms of not making it a 5% across the board. And I know a lot of folks have been using that as sort of a very tough criticism of what the mayor is proposing. What do other folks, I know we also brought the libraries, we also have DCLA funding and arts cultural organizations as well. There could be some budget cuts, but do folks have a opinion on sort of what Leslie has outlined and proposed in terms of the letter?
I think that sounds great, because I think no one wants the budget cuts, and so it's sort of like why we just waste our time with a letter that says no budget cuts, but I think outlining the importance of why not the 5% across the board, the importance of education with ripple effects. And then I would just say, I mean, obviously nobody wants to say, here, yeah, you can have some of my money, but to implore the city to look at what could be deferred while we go through this hopefully semi-temporary particular hardship that we're going through that's so cost prohibitive. So I don't know what this thing could be, and I'm sure nothing can be given up, but I think that's something can be, something has to be deferred here. We may be disappointed to say, oh, we're really looking forward to X, Y, or Z thing coming up, but education is more important.
Yeah.
Libraries are more important.
Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, I think if it's not a deferment, what are the alternatives? Because certainly, I think we're all in agreement, no cuts are good, but it's like, well, what's the alternative? Like, how do we be constructed in that? Well, how do you get to that solution?
And if it's like libraries would be a different letter though, you know what I mean, like this would just be like mayor of school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to do something like that, would be another letter to the mayor outlining those. I'm not saying that you should or should not do it, just.
Yeah, schools at the top, yeah.
Okay, okay.
I thought you could be virtual.
Wow.
It's very important. She wanted to come in person, so she had to go down.
I'll just say, in case you guys vote on this letter while getting going away, just don't forget to take a look at the letter we just did. We just did a very general budget cut letter, so that's what make sure you don't,
Okay, thank you.
stay in the lanes there.
Well, so when we're talking about education budget cuts, then we should think about what are like the top 3 that we really want to protect. And I will say that,
After school.
okay, yes, that's good. And Superintendent Kelly was talking about how pre-K and pre-K are highly sought after in our district. And so we have about 200 to 300 pre-K, 3K seats. And 3K is in huge demand. There's just never enough for that.
Contrary to what the mayor is saying though.
Well, he's talking about different parts of the city, right? Depends on where, yes, exactly, right. So here, there's a huge wait for pre-K. Pre-K is slightly different because by the time kids go to pre-K, they want the extended program, and this is why the after-school becomes important, because it's not part of the city funding for elementary school, so that I don't think they're gonna pay for this one anyway. But the point is, I think that the pre-K, 3K, the after-school program, and then we should think of it.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I would throw out there is support for social services, given sort of the need that our schools have. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
That's number 1.
I know, that's Maria.
So I don't want to say that always.
No, I understand.
I think in the letter we also say that they're terrifically strained right now anyway, especially with all the migrants in our area. I don't know if you want to add that into this letter, but I mean, we've asked for bilingual teachers in our, remember budget cut for Jesse, that was one of our top ones, bilingual educators. That would be.
Yeah, and assistance with families and children in transitional housing and where they,
Yes.
yeah, so.
I think this is strong.
So. Welcome, council member.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you. Thank you for joining us in person.
Yes.
Special treat. So we were just having a conversation, really just a roundtable conversation about the proposed budget cuts that are.
On education.
Particularly on education as a whole, the sort of the 5% to every agency, but our focus here tonight is around education and what are sort of the priorities that we have as a committee, as a community that we want to ensure are protected. So we were just talking about after-school programming, pre-K, 3K, and then staff support for social services within schools to help with migrant families, people who are homeless. So that's sort of, as we just quickly discussed, some of the priorities that we identified.
There's a bigger priority that you're not mentioning. First of all, tomorrow's a big deal. We're all gonna be here at 9 at the Row because 40 families. I'll be there at 9. are gonna be evicted. So that's troubling, just since it's your community, you know, only too long. Well, 9 o'clock, but the roll.
It's technically on the other side of the game. Yeah.
But
it's
you let
just
them
on-
go to your.
I didn't know.
They go to our schools, right?
Yeah.
That's-
That's because of the
Very
the
upset.
expiration of the 60-day.
Yes.
The 60 days up.
The big press conference today doesn't seem to matter. Anyway, but the biggest issue, believe it or not, I did a lot of research on this with staff today, is the fact that and you touched on it, the non-hiring. Let me give you an example. What happens is, and I got 3 examples, you've got the class size issue, which interestingly enough, because District 3 and District 2 have excellent schools. And as a result, we have overcrowding. Thank God for the migrants, because I know we were under count for a while, but the schools are usually overbooked. And that means that you have to hire more teachers. Guess what? Under this, I'm trying to use a nice word, under this plan that the mayor has, we can't hire. So that's class size can't be enforced, can't be implemented if you can't hire, number 1. Number 2, guess what? People retire, they move. You can't hire. So this whole vacancy issue is actually number 1 in terms on the minds, you know, because what you're talking about makes sense. But if you want to know what the real problem is this craziness on vacancy. And then number 3 is just the schools. In other words, if you are a student and you're finishing college and you say, oh, what do I want to do? Be a teacher? No, I can't get a job because nobody is hiring. So it'll be very interesting to check between Teachers College, Hunter, et cetera, how many students are actually enrolling because they hear those students are smart. They're gonna go where there's a job and where they can get, you know, support in terms of their future. So actually the graduate schools are upset. And then what that brings, of course, is the issue of special ed, which you touched on, but because many students don't go into special ed teaching, there's a huge shortage, you can't hire. People are really upset about this, I mean, in terms of the education community. And then, I think the other issue is, of course, to the credit of the UFT, they have a lawsuit about this, just FYI, in terms of budget cuts in general, but it's mostly focused on this issue. That's what their lawsuit is about. And then I also want to just mention that, you know, the community schools, I don't know how many you have in District 2, we have very few in District 3, but they're excellent. Those are the wraparound schools, right? So you have got the dental, you got the social worker, you got everything. But if you don't, again, touching on your need for special programming and support after school and so on, if you can't hire, then you can't have a community school. So it impacts not only the teachers, but also all the support services, big time. This whole hiring thing, the mayor has something called pivot. I don't know what the hell it is. I don't know, something pivot. He thinks it's a new program. I don't know what the hell it is. So you need to check that out. There's something that's.
Is it like a workforce development?
Yeah, no, I think it has to do with, he thinks it's a community school, which is not.
Okay.
What is it called? It's something pivot, I should know what it is. I actually never, that's not crossed my desk, but my staff brought it to my attention. So I just want to say, as all what you talked about is important, but the fact that you can't hire, let me tell you, some of the school District 3 and 2, I know, they have extra funding because they're smart, they write grants. They can't spend them. They're literally sitting on millions of dollars as we sit here now because they can't hire a teacher. You can't even hire if you have federal money or private money. You cannot hire a teacher, according to the mayor.
Is it a free, I don't understand, it's just a freeze? Or
Freeze, no, there's a freeze,
because of the budget, regardless of where the money
This
comes
is
from?
all budget, wherever the
Okay.
money comes from, there's a freeze.
But isn't there a state law where they have to have a certain amount of teachers, so it's violating state law? I'm just
Well, I mean,
wondering.
there's a state law that John Lou passed that says the class size has to be X. 20 if you're in, 20, 22, 25, depending on how old your kid, anyway, all of this is strange. So, but I want to just let you know that this teacher shortage, so we call it, because what happens is, when the budget cuts came, what DOE did, like everybody else, is cut the vacancies.
Right.
So if you have no vacancy because it's been cut, then you can't fill it with a teacher because there's no vacancy there. It's a very bad vicious circle. So I wanted, everybody we talked to today was apoplectic. And then you have, all the budget cuts, you're right. The UFT's put out a paper. City council has papers about the cuts. I'm sure you have all that. You can get that online. But it's And I have to say that the schools here have been phenomenal with the migrants, just phenomenal. You see these, I mean, I've been to quite a few dinners at different schools and the parents have come through phenomenally. They have nonprofits that are supporting them, et cetera, et cetera. This is not the time to be cutting, not to mention kicking families out.
Yeah, we just did a letter on, just the whole 60-day eviction policy is insane because the child could actually change schools 5 times a year under that policy, which makes 0 sense. And our school communities have done everything to make these, not just the students, but the families, feel welcome, be a part of the community, and then to see the kids having to move to different schools. I did hear something about, on the news, I don't know if it's true or not, that children in Manhattan shelters, if they reapply for shelter, then they'll get priority to stay in Manhattan. I don't really know if that's.
Yeah, well, that's a nice on paper.
Right, exactly. It's nice on paper.
And what the DOE and the mayor are stating, everybody's upset about this except the mayor, since, I don't know, and OMB. What they say, which makes me even more upset, is we're making space for families who live closer to the schools that the kids are currently in. What? The kids are at the Row and the Watson and so on, they're in local schools.
Right.
What are you talking about?
Exactly.
So you're gonna send people to Floyd Bennett Field who are gonna then get to PS 11? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah, they forget that we're a community here with schools, yeah.
Is the expectation that families who have to leave the shelter are going back to PATH?
They're going to Roosevelt.
Yeah, so
Go back to the Roosevelt.
that's Roosevelt is the path for this
Oh, okay.
For this
situation. Yes, or they're expected to go with a family member somewhere, or and Governor Hochul was saying that there might be some jobs for migrants in upstate. So it's just a mixed bag. We have no idea at this point. They also said there could be apartments available, which is like really shocking to me.
I haven't heard that.
That was shocking to me. We're moving people into apartments. I mean, there are no apartments, so I don't even know. So,
I hadn't heard that one.
So we were discussing a possible letter from this committee on this issue.
Good.
In regards to the hiring freeze and addressing that, is that something that, I mean, that certainly seems like a top line thing. Without that, you can't do.
Yeah, and you
all
can
those
add all
other
the other things. You can add all the other.
So maybe we could at the top, sort of re-propose the letter.
Maybe
Right.
it's separate, and I
Yeah.
think she's very, Gail's very, sorry, the council members
Yeah,
very
Gail's
specific
fine, Gail's
on,
fine.
on this particular, maybe it's another letter specifically. Because the letter we were proposing was more about, it's a reaction to the proposed budget cut across the board.
Right.
And how it shouldn't be a cut across the board, you should, this is your job, Mr. Mayor, prioritize, and I think Gail is talking about a very specific. I mean, you can add it, you can
Yeah.
I think
put
one
them both
letter, you got
together.
too many letters.
One
and I-
letter.
they
Put it
barely-
together.
barely-
I know, are they even gonna read it exactly? How many letters can they write?
One letter.
Yeah, one
You guys
letter.
are already on record for the not across the board cut. I mean, as a board, we wrote that. I mean, if you want to get into specifics, yeah, you guys did that. Remember, we came through.
Was that my letter? Oh.
No, no.
What's that? Task force?
No. We
With the vacancy,
was the exact.
we're not filling the vacancy.
Right, but
That's
that,
different.
I don't think you need to.
But I think you should highlight this,
So
that's very significant.
Yeah.
We've been, that's happened even in the fire department, where they're not filling base, but with the education, it's really strict, and we should CC this letter to the state senate, assembly, and the governor, because they're violating state law. So the State Department of Education, so it could be addressed to whoever, the mayor in the city, but they should see it, CC. Because that's very significant about the vacancy. Gail highlighted the great.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, I mean, what I call John Lewis law, but this, the mayor hates it, the chancellor hates it, but class size is the law. You cannot implement that law if you don't have teachers.
Right, exactly. So I think that the letter can have sort of 2 parts then. The sort of hiring freeze and the vacancy, that's citywide, because we are trying to do this law, that's what it is. So then we can also do a more localized, talking about the pre-K and 3K seats that are here, with the long wait list and all that, and so we could do that. Yeah, I think that could definitely work. So this hiring freeze, so there's the hiring freeze, the vacancy issue, but then there's also, you're saying that, or we should actually look into what's happening in terms of our programs, our college programs, of anyone entering these programs, because there may be a fear that they're not gonna get a job anyway.
I was
so
surprised at that, but that's what educators are saying. You could check with some of the grad schools.
Mhm. Okay.
I was a little frightened, to be honest. We've always got desperate for teachers, right? And so here they're concerned that they may not want to go into
Check
the
with couple of
profession.
your teachers' college.
Yeah, it's all over the colleges and ask them.
We are friends,
Yeah.
Yeah, they have.
Oh, pretty surprised at that.
So while we have you here, I just wanna pick your brain too about the, libraries. We're also in arts. And so I think libraries, does that fall under arts?
Yeah.
education.
Yeah, right, because the library's actually been helping the migrants in a big way.
Right.
ESL classes, people can go and use their computers, so I think that's something also important that we want to include.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions or comments?
Inga, Charlie, anyone else online?
No, I wanted to echo concerns about the Row Hotel. My son is in 4th grade at Midtown West, which is across the street from the Row, and he's got a classmate, and I guess his classmate's not going to be there tomorrow. And I guess we'll get a new classmate who doesn't know anyone and doesn't know the school, and I guess that's going to keep happening every 60 days, and that just doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Psychological damage soon to the actual kids is
Yeah.
far.
Let alone what they already went through.
I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. No.
I asked legal aid, I would like them to sue or something. It turns out, as I understand it, and I don't, you'd have to check with them, but if there was a family that had a child at Midtown West or wherever, and then they get moved to, God help us, Floyd Bennett Field, and the child can't get there because obvious reasons, then apparently that could be a lawsuit.
Oh.
But not, I mean, I thought, with that point, 60-40 families are out.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of, could we do preventive? But they
Yes.
don't seem to have anything to hang their hat on in terms of prevention. So there, I mean, I thought there would be some lawsuits by now, but
Is the reasoning behind it that the mayor or people in charge are saying that this is supposed to be temporary, right? These are not permanent
I think what
shelters.
they're saying
This
is
is
get out of
temporary
town.
and we need, yeah, like, well, there are more people coming, right? Like, there's so many more coming. It's kind of like when the pipe gets clogged at they keep it moving. I don't know, like, this is not a.
you can
permanent
sit down and
shelter.
talk to people and have a conversation. I think we could work it out. Yeah, but that's not what's happening. That's my opinion. I'm really angry about this after talking.
Yeah.
I'm really angry.
So we have a motion? Yeah, so we need a motion, I think, to the letter that we've outlined in terms of the high level hiring freeze concern, as well as identifying
I make my motion.
priorities. This motion, we have a second. Great.
Thank you.
All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Fantastic. That was easy. All right, well, I think you hit everything.
Really?
I mean, right? We've,
That's a big letter, by the way. That's
yeah, that is a big.
Yeah, well,
I'm taking home for Ray Tomato.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a major letter.
Well, I don't want that.
Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for bringing that to our
Thank you.
attention, because we were not, talking about
It
that.
came from all directions. It came from the schools, it came from the policymakers, it came from the advocates. It came from everyone, the same
Okay.
refrain.
And indefinite freeze?
At this point, it's 5% November mod, which is we're beyond, a 5% January mod, which they're gonna be bumping up against each other. And then another 5% for the regular budget, if this all happens. The city council has a say. It can't, it's, not like the regular budget where we negotiate. You know what I'm saying?
Well, thank you for everything, Gail. We
Thank you
appreciate it.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And there's lots more on the city council website, you can get all the, but I don't think that's really what you're looking for, but it's there if you want, what got cut.
Good to know. Do you think the preliminary will be on time?
By July first? Oh, the preliminary.
Preliminary, yeah.
I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, we have a date, right? I forget what it is. We do have
Yeah,
a date.
last year they did it right in January, right in the January, which is surprising.
Is that early?
Well, it's on time, it's usually.
Oh, usually it's February,
Yeah.
even leads into February.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I would
Yeah,
assume,
quick
because we only have until
Yeah.
mid-January to answer the November mod.
Right.
So I would assume, I don't know why I'm thinking this, but it won't be on time, that's just a guess,
Yeah.
but I could be wrong, I don't know.
So, well, I think any old or new business, I think that was, yeah, anything that the committee like to bring up?
When's the last time Iris was here?
She was
I've
here
just been
recently.
there, yeah.
She was here recently.
Yeah.
Just like 2 months ago.
That's why we did the 60-day letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Iris Gerson from, I think, community school.
Shelter.
No, she's.
Yeah.
Temporary housing.
Temporary housing.
That's
The
it,
DOE.
but I think
Right, right.
temporary housing is under
The DOE.
community school.
No, it's just.
I can't remember.
Right, right.
But I always appreciate when she's here and hearing what's happening.
I think in District 2, our only community schools in Chinatown, I think it's like PS1 or PS2. But they, yeah, there was talk of turning one of them in the west side here, but I don't think it ever happened, so.
Yeah, we needed more funding, that last budget only included funding for the continuation of the current community schools. They're wonderful, I mean, we always want more, but funding.
I do want to ask you a question, while I have you, because so many of our schools, of course, are taking in a lot of migrants. We already were, lower in terms of raising PTA funds in terms of, compared to some of our other schools in District 2. We have some schools that are raising $1 million
Right,
a year, and then we have some that are basically can't get 30,000. So years ago, when I was on the CEC, we had asked de Blasio, was there a way that PTAs could share funds, not be forced to share funds, but if they wanted to, they could partner and have like a sister school. And it seems like we keep getting blocked on being able to do that unless there's some like, I think it's during Superstorm Sandy, my child was at Midtown West. We did give money to another school in Coney Island somewhere, so that was okay.
right.
But in terms of the migrants, to me, that is another extraordinary sort of emergency circumstance. So how will the school be able to do that? Because we're not, somehow it's not happening.
Let me find out, I don't know the answer, I do know in District 3, have you heard what they're doing there? Oh my goodness. PS 87 parents went nuts, they had about 50, I guess, migrant students, a couple of years ago already. And they formed a 501c3. And I always said to the superintendent, I have bad news for you. Just move away, because these parents can take care of your district even better than you. And so now they've got a good amount of money in it. They partner with every JCC and every other organization you can think of. And they are a force to be reckoned with. They're paying for lawyers, they're paying for clothes and food and housing and, oh my goodness.
87, you said?
PS 87.
Yeah, my friend's on the PTA, like, one of my best on the PTA there, that's a great, I mean,
It's a
they're.
great
they're
school, but
tough.
these parents something else.
Where is it located?
Upper
78th
West
Street,
Side, yeah.
78th Street. Anyway, what I'm saying is that's what they're doing. So every school in District 3 that has migrants, which are almost all of them, is a member of this 501c3.
Wow.
So they are kicking
That's
butts.
amazing.
And they get.
And
money.
I'll share
They
with
get-
Jesse the name of the woman who's in
Please
charge of it.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah, because we could use
And you
that as
could,
a
I mean,
model.
that's,
Yeah.
it's working.
Yes.
I mean, they meet with the superintendent every week.
And our superintendent is great and would love to do something
Yes.
like that, because we had a school that came to us, a PTA.
51.
And they were having so many issues and they came to us asking how they could raise money, but this could be used as a model.
Yeah, so I will get you
That
the
would be
details.
fantastic.
That'd be great.
She's been in the Times, in the articles quite a bit, really protesting the 60-day rule. And what's exciting for me, these migrant kids are going to Central Park West for sleepovers, I mean, it's something else.
Yeah, it is.
You could, it's something else.
Well, that's
Yeah,
good.
can I ask,
This is wild, it's just wild, so that's why the mayor doesn't get it,
No.
it's a tragedy, but, I mean, I don't think it's criminal.
thinking out of the box, as
Yeah.
this school just did. What's your opinion about breaking down this Board of Education, like a library, like the library system.
The Times today had a story about what's gonna happen in Albany. This is the year to think about it, right? This is the year to think about it.
Yeah, you have a Brooklyn, Queens, you have Manhattan, Bronx.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem too, like with the PEP, which is, we all have members and friends on the PEP, the citywide group.
Right.
And, Bloomberg, de Blasio, Bloomberg, I think they all, eliminated, cut people off as soon as they voted against them. So the mayor controls everything, right? So if it was to be differently organized, I think there has to be a slightly different governance. Governance seems to be the problem. So maybe what you suggest makes sense. Governance is the issue. Is that PEP, you can't, if you're appointed by the mayor and they have a majority,
Right.
you can't say anything except what the mayor wants. And that doesn't matter who the mayor is, they all do the same thing. So it's really upsetting, and there are more parent reps on there now. You probably have somebody from your area, I don't know, from district three.
Yeah, there has to be at least
I
one.
don't know, but so those are the folks who are really upset, because they get material late. And this supposed to be the board of the DOE, they're supposed to be making decisions for the DOE.
Yeah.
So Albany's, this is the year, the mayor has to say why he can keep the schools. And the Times they had a big story, or the Daily News, or somebody, Daily News, I can't remember. About the fact that there's a lot of consternation in Albany. I don't really know if I want to give it back to the state.
Right.
But I just want different governance.
They don't understand the nuances
Yeah,
here.
I don't know what
But
happens there.
if anyone's interested, next week, there is a meeting at FIT about mayoral control.
Oh, interesting.
So
That
we
should
should make
also be
public
checked in
statements.
items, maybe in our next thing to write, if you
Mayoral
want,
control.
to write a letter to Tony and whoever our state rep, I mean, I don't know, because to pontificate on that. I don't know what the committee would feel about that, though.
With the FIT, when,
It is on the 18th.
And they're doing
That's
hearings,
on mail.
hearings in every borough. I think they did Queens already.
Yeah.
And they're doing hearings in every borough. It'd be important to have your letter, I mean, even though it's,
Yeah,
to have your discussion there.
I think that would be.
To make a couple of points that we're
Plus,
making in
it's
the
in your
letter.
area too.
Yeah.
I know.
Mhm. And how long have the schools been under the mayor's control?
Bloomberg.
Oh, that started with that.
I think it was last year, Bloomberg, or 2 years before he pulled it off. I would say 2012, I'm guessing now.
Bring back Bloomberg.
2012,
was much earlier, he did it.
no, he tried a few times.
Yeah.
It was the end of the Bloomberg, third term of Bloomberg. Whatever that was.
So what would be the alternative then?
Well, the state had them before, so
Right,
I don't know if there's something in between.
That's what I mean.
I don't, I'm not, it's not my expertise. I know that John Liu, of course, is head of the committee, New York City schools.
Right.
I don't know who it is in the assembly, to be honest with you. But there's gonna be a lot of discussion about this topic, a lot,
Yeah.
a lot. And I know PEP members are upset, the people who represent the boroughs. The libraries are, I don't know, it's governance is who's in charge of the DOE. I'm not a big fan of this. It's being important. Yeah, I don't want to be alone on this. Governance, who's in charge?
Did you have something you wanted to say? All right. Well, it was such a delight to have
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for the topic, it's a very important topic.
We didn't know you were coming in person, to see Jesse run downstairs. You went down here.
I got the guy at the front desk, he
Security
said,
guy was like, Yale, I was like, stop.
thank you very much.
I can make a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I was saying, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Sorry, go ahead.
I made a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
The meeting.
All right.